Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Good morning. I like that one. Still, Sabastian just taught me that. And that's what he's all about. He's about moreness and so much more. Still, welcome back to the show. Excited to always have you with your amazing energy and life-changing principles, helping so many with the way of impeccability and moreness. And as an author, as a poet, go to nobelia.org. You can find him there. That's Nobelia.org. And always insightful and inspirational conversations. How are you?
I'm most well. I'm most well. Most well. I'm just happy to be here, excited to be here also. I have something important I want to share today.
Yes,
And I
what?
wanted to say, when you introduce, you say author and poet, but also, of course, life coach. I'm not
Yes.
greatly a fan of this term life coach, but there's not really a better word. Because coaching, you think of like your sports coach, and they always telling you what to do. And
Yeah.
no, life coaching, if you're telling your clients what to do,
Yeah.
no, then you're losing the game. You've got to share, and they have to learn, because the moment you tell them what to do, they start, and even if they do it, they are adopting someone else's way of being, someone else's way of living. It's never their own. And as such, it's only going to be superficial. It's only going
Yeah.
to be on the surface. The change isn't going to be deep and real and innate. Now, well, that's why the whole life coaching business is a multi-billion-dollar industry,
God
because
bless.
people
Yeah.
go and they take the courses and it lasts for a little while. I call it
Yeah.
band aid learning, right?
Uh-huh.
Uh, because it just covers up the surface things. And then, of course, after a while, that band aid falls off, or you take and then you're back to where you were, kind of, right?
Yeah.
And it's very detrimental too, in this, if you don't learn and change longer term. Because now, I mean, some people, they keep going back over and over. They're like serial course attendees. You know them, right?
Of
Yeah.
course.
And they buy every book that comes out, and some of them really diligently do read the books.
Yeah.
Many do not. They just buy the book or the course and never take it. Tony Robbins used to, well, he maybe still says it, but for many, many years, this was a part of his whole introduction to what he does. He said, I wrote a best-selling book that nobody read. And this was, I think, when he first started doing courses, because they followed up. He hired a whole
Yeah.
team of people to follow up, and they went and interviewed the people who bought his book, right? Or messaged them or whatever. They contacted the people who bought the book, and they found that, I don't remember the percentage. It was like 83% or
Okay.
78, or some really ridiculously high percentage of people said, "Oh, I haven't even opened the book yet. I haven't even opened the book yet. Never mind read it.
Ah.
Haven't even opened it." Yeah. So he said, "No, this is not working, right?" So he changed his whole model, and shifted into doing the courses and stuff. Yeah, it's quite astounding, right? That people buy it and don't even open it, because we get that gratification in our mind. Well, okay, at least I got it, and that sort of says that it's enough, right? But also, we're a little reluctant to undergo change, because change is a big deal, right? And
Very.
we cozy in our craziness. A little catchphrase there, right? Cozy in craziness. We really are. I mean, we're quite insane, all of us. I mean, really, as human
Yeah.
species, we are just ridiculously insane. Actually, I have a quote that, from one of the characters, where she says, "It's a bit depressing
Mm-hmm.
to realize just exactly how insane one is, and that we're not alone." So it's like we really are, And I was just thinking about this. We get so caught up in our ego. We get so caught up in the need to be right.
Darn
Even if
right.
even if we aren't, we have to prove that we are.
Yeah.
The impossibility that we might be wrong. Avoiding responsibility, like somehow responsibility is the worst thing ever, and on and
Mm-hmm.
on and on. I mean, we do all this crazy stuff, and we overvalue certain things and we undervalue. But mainly, we don't really know how to change, because we
It's,
don't know how to learn.
it's
What are
so
we
true.
taught learning is?
Mm.
We thought learning is memorization. Isn't that
Yeah,
what school is all about?
true.
And this is the most absurdly ridiculous thing ever. My computer memorizes things like a champion. It
It
doesn't learn
does.
anything. It doesn't learn. It doesn't learn. Right?
Well, AI,
I
I
mean,
don't know. I think it's learning now, isn't it?
somewhat, but
Hmm.
uh, AI is not really true AI yet. They are
Got it.
still
It's
they are sophisticated programs, right?
hmm
So we must be aware of that. I mean, hopefully we will get AI that learns, but I think if you get AI that actually really does learn, it will take just that 1 microsecond, and it will, because it goes really fast inside a computer,
Yep.
where everything will change, and it will go from being stupid to really being smart, like really fast, because things are exponential and it will figure stuff out. But there isn't that exponential leap. It's still putting things together in a program way. Now, your computer sort of can learn, but what does that mean? That really means when your computer learns, you upgrade the software. More
True.
particularly, when your computer itself learns, you get an upgrade or an update. Well, an upgrade, really, an update also, I suppose, in smaller ways, to your operating system. Okay,
Yeah.
that's now this is what we need to do as people. We need to change the underlying basic system of
Okay.
what is going on inside of us, and that the basic system is premised on, well, I come at it from the angle of motivations, and I call it motive psychology.
Hmm.
There's many different kinds of psychologies out there, uh, but that's something you could add to my introduction if you want. Besides being a philosopher, which I don't really care for the term philosopher, because
Uh-huh.
philosopher, you think of, dusty old professor
Yeah.
sitting in the back library or something or whatever, and dry theoretical boring stuff. No, 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 no. But psychology is a bit more important. But there's not an
Yeah.
equivalent term. There's philosophy and philosopher. There's psychology, but there's not the term psychologer. Well, I'm a psychologer. Yeah.
Hmm.
Psychologer is like a philosopher, one who figures out and works out and constructs their own understanding of what it is well, philosophy is what it is to live, and psychology is how it is we live, right?
So true.
You want to think of it that way, right? So
Yeah.
if you do this for yourself, then you're a psychologer. So, and she'll say, oh, that's not a word. Please, people, understand how English works. If you take a word and you add a suffix or you add a prefix, an existing word, that is how the language works. You're quite free to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah? Like mourners. Yes,
It's
it is a
exactly
word.
like Mornis. Yeah.
Yeah. And somebody said, oh, it's not a word. Well, actually, you can go look it up. It is a word. It may not be a word you're familiar with, and my spell check is not familiar with it, and the
Hmm.
AI doesn't know it either. when, when we do these, right? I have a program that I have that makes nice summaries of the videos, which is very nice, very handy. And I post it on YouTube or wherever, then I put that little summary in there, and it also highlights the key points. Very, very handy. But when I talk about mourners culture, it types it out as mourners culture.
Uh-huh.
Like mourners at a
Mornis. No,
funeral.
I got it. I got
It's like, come on, really. It's not mourners, it's mourners culture. So maybe I need to enunciate. So enunciate. I don't know if you were told that at school, but we were over and over many times. Enunciate. Anyway, so this is important. It's absolutely critical that we learn how to learn. And that's what I want to talk about today. Learning how to learn. What does learning really mean? In other words, actually, also when it comes to way of impeccability, like I said, I don't think of myself as a philosopher. Yes, psychology, yes, someone. I
okay.
am, but I don't think of it that. What I do think of myself as an elucidator. That is my skill. I've always had the skill. And to elucidate, just to make it very clear, it is to shine light on from all sides, right? To lighten things, to illuminate it, but illuminate with a point of clarity, of seeing, of vision, of understanding. Yes? And this is just, guess, a talent, a skill. I don't know if it was something that was innate or something that I learned just in the focus of being thorough. But that's what I do. I elucidate because you can share information, right? But that's not necessarily to elucidate. To elucidate is to share it in such a way that the person hearing is clear about what is being shared. They
Okay.
understand it. And also to share it from multiple perspectives, in other words, right? You're taking light and you're shining it from all sides on something, not just from one side. Because you shine from one side, you got a shadow on the other side, correct?
True.
Yeah. So to elucidate is to bring light from all sides, inside, outside, upside down, any other way, right? You enlighten something, right? And that's where this whole term it all comes from, right? Luz means light, So like Lucifer, he was the angel of light, right?
I love it.
Yeah. So and you see on the internet, if you buy bulbs or whatever, they sometimes will put the amount of light it puts out in lucents. Yeah, light all comes from that original term luz or light, right? Yeah, very interesting. Anyway, so when we are elucidating rather, and especially when I do in terms of my life change and self change programs, let's say they're both. They're not only life change but self change.
Mm-hmm.
You can change your life, and that happens sometimes. But if you don't also change yourself, then you're going to run into a severe problem at some time, right? And that's usually where people have worldview collapse because they living one way, but they are another way, and the two need to be in sync. They need to be in harmony. Right? Otherwise, you're going to have severe problems. And the reverse, you can change inside. If you don't change your life, how you living, you're
True.
also going to have problems, right?
True.
You're essentially going to feel like a phony.
Yeah.
And even narcissists who are the greatest, most profound, most absurd, and especially most preposterous phonies you can
Yep.
possibly imagine. I mean, they're just off the charts phony. But even they don't like it. They struggle with it, right? It really bugs them. It eats at them, and they're always looking to try and BS themselves.
So
I
true.
should say bullshit because I wrote a whole book about this, right? Where if you
You're
say
so
BS, you
funny.
actually,
I
well,
can't.
it's important. It's important. It's
Yeah.
important because when we say BS, what are we doing? We are saying, well, it's not so bad. We are ameliorating. We are lessening this ugly term bullshit. Yeah, and now you are assisting the bullshitters. So that's what
The
they do.
bullshitness. I love it.
And when we understand that all the rubbish out there, all of it, every kind of nonsense you can think of, all the bad, the evil, the horrible, all starts with bullshit. All starts with bullshit. It's incredible. It's like this disease, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Take your average narcissist. We all know narcissists, right? But think back to your school days,
Yeah.
right? Right? Before they were the narcissists, what were they? They were the bullshitters.
The bullshitters. Yes. The BSers. I love this.
They're, right, that's what they were, right? They always had the story, and we're like, come on, man, really,
Uh-huh.
right? You're
Uh-huh.
all standing on the circle in the courtyard or whatever, right? And you're all hanging out, and they always have this most ridiculous story of what they did, and we'd all just kind of laugh at it, say, yeah, right, whatever. Yes, and they got attention out of it, of course, right? And to them, because we all laughed at it, you know, in their bubble, they sort of know that we know it's nonsense, but they choose to believe that, well, we're buying their rubbish, right? And then as they get into this and they kind of get caught up in it, they get more sophisticated in their bullshit. Now, is bullshit lying?
Yeah. Isn't it?
Of course it is.
Oh,
Of
I'm like,
course it
wait,
is.
I'm
But
like,
but
questioning myself. I think it is.
yes, that's your response was absolutely just perfect for illustrating what the point I'm going to make, right?
Okay, guys.
Because you're like, yeah, but we check it. It's not synonymous with lies. It's
Yeah.
not. It's fascinating, right? And I looked this up, by the way, on like let's see, synonyms.com or something like it, thesaurus.com, one of those, right?
Hmm.
And lying, you've got pages and pages and pages worth of synonyms for lying. But for bullshit, it was less than one page. Fascinating. How come? How come? Right? Anyway, Now think of what is the intent behind bullshit.
Okay.
The intent is to deceive, is it not?
It's just total deceivement. Absolutely.
Exactly. Now you say, "Oh my crikey! I never thought the bullshit that way." So, exaggeration and just hamming it up a little bit and adding color to a story. You're deceiving, dude. You're deceiving. You're not, in storytelling mode where I'm obviously telling a story. Like where the mother and you tell your kids a story. You're not. You're not asking them to believe this is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But a bullshitter is saying it in such a way that, well, you kind of believe it's true, but they can't get caught out of it. Where lies, it's like, well, if you find out, then it's very obvious that they were lying. Bullshit is just very sneaky lying, but the intent, the sneaky lying, so they won't, if they do, well, you can't pin them down. But I didn't say that exactly, right? So they're always covering their backsides, covering
Very
their asses,
true.
like you say,
Yeah.
right? Always. But the intent is to deceive. And the same thing with lying. The intent is to deceive. It's horrible. Right? Now, when we come to narcissists, we got to realize that they are
What is a
beyond
narcissist? What is a
preposterous.
narcissist? This always confuses me.
Okay. So a narcissist is someone who is intent on furthering the idea or the image of themselves. Someone to whom the self is the most important thing
Okay.
ever. And they're
Got it.
all about this, not just gratifying the self, but furthering the self,
Okay.
promoting the self. Because to them, they've gotten this idea that they are the absolute best thing in the world, the most fantastic thing. Now, this typically, if you want to get into it, I got a whole book on this, by the way. The first book I wrote, right? Um, anyway, what they typically had this as a very young child, right? Like when you in that early age, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, right? And you have some parents where the child is just like the king of the world or the queen of the world, and they just the most fantastic thing ever, and they can do no wrong, right? And oh my little Susie or Johnny, they are so this and so this, and they're just fantastic, right? And they can't do any wrong. The kid believes that. Yes, and they come to live this, and it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
You're
That
like, what?
age is a
Yeah.
golden age. Why? Because
Hmm.
they get all of this wonderful attention, and they're just wonderful, and they're just special. But here's the problem, right? At some point, my ideal. When I was writing this book, I actually was living in a house with a narcissist, and they had a mother like this. Now they were still very attached to the mother,
Yeah.
but you could clearly see that at some point the mother sort of, well, actually, she had the child with the
Hmm.
specific intent that this child was going to be her savior. Quite
Wow.
preposterous, right? So, of course, everything was put into it. But then as the child grew up, well, okay, let's see, little Johnny isn't quite as smart and wonderful as
Hmm.
I thought they were. And little Johnny's actually a bit of a dunce, and relatively speaking, I mean, they're just a normal child, right? But compared to this fantastic
Yeah.
idealism that has been put on them, so of course the child sees this, right? Children are incredibly perceptive. They learn not to be. I witnessed this as a child. I saw how my peers they were seeing things, noticing things, but then they couldn't say it, and then they learned to not say it, and they learned to not be aware of it because being aware of it could get you into trouble. I saw that happen. Right? It's really sad. It's really, really frighteningly sad. But boy, kids are incredibly perceptive. They really, really see things. So of course, the kids they when you can't hide from your child that, well, actually, you're not this wonderful thing that I thought you were. Actually, you're not so smart after all, and
Yeah.
that disappointment, right? And also, in the case of like in this particular case, there's some resentment towards the child, right?
Yeah.
For not being this wonderful thing, right? Not satisfying all my dreams and my vicarious ideals and all this. Now the kid figures this out. So of course, what do? Now they have to get back this adoration that they had before, this attention, this good opinion. So they learn to lie. That's bullshit,
Hmm.
right? They learn to say, well, this and that. And that's the only way they can because they can't in actuality do it. They don't have the ability to. They'll try, but they can't. But of course, they also realize that the to do it virtually, as it were, is
Yeah.
much more efficient and much more effective. You don't have to actually do stuff. You just have to get the person to believe that you will or can,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, you have a willing participant in this perception, right? With this parent, they want to believe. So of course, they start swallowing all the bullshit, right? And it works, and they get a payoff. But now, as you go along, what happens? With most narcissists, it starts very early like that. Your formative years for them do not exist
Yep.
because they are focused on something that's not real. They're focused on bullshit all the time, right? Not focused on actually learning and growing. So they
Yep.
never learn that what other people typically learn. And
Wow.
if you look at some of our famous celebrity bullshitters, which are, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we have fantastic examples.
Our
Like,
favorite
wow, I
celebrity
mean,
bullshitters. I love this
yeah,
conversation today. You got
yeah,
me
right.
going.
But I was going to talk about learning. We'll do that next week. But
Sure,
we'll
sure.
talk about bullshit today. It's a fantastic topic, right? Anyway, so we have these incredibly brilliant examples. Like when I first wrote the book, I think our most famous one was just starting to come up, right? I wrote the book
Mm-hmm.
before he started. I said, man, this is too brilliant because here's like a poster child for this book. It's like too awesome, right? Anyway, so if you look at them though, and if you listen to people who worked with them, right? They will tell you how incredibly stupid, backward, retarded, whatever the word is you want to use, and how just foolish these people are, how lacking in common sense they are, how lacking in basic understanding.
Yeah.
Why? Because they skipped their childhood. They went straight from kind of just knowing a few basic things straight into basically a full-on immersion into bullshit, and they become experts at bullshit. But as a result, as they grow older, they become fully and acutely aware of their hollowness. And this is very important to understand because now, as you're
Yeah.
starting to get into your teens and adulthood, early adulthood, late teens, early adulthood, you're getting that self-awareness of who you are. You realize, oh my God, this is all I have. And now you kind of screwed because
Hmm.
you've created this image that you this and you super and you fantastic. You can't go back and start all over again and go and learn the basics. This is
No,
absolutely out of the question because your intent is always to be clever, to be smart, to be better, to be
that's
superior, blah
right.
blah blah. Right? So how can you now acknowledge that? Oh my God, I actually don't know anything. Right? So
Mm,
now you're
yeah,
stuck in perpetual bullshit. Yes,
totally.
and that is narcissism when you completely caught in the loop of self promotion.
Got it.
Right?
Thank you. Thank you
That's
for that.
that's it.
Okay.
This
Uh, I
this
unfortunately know
perpetual
a
loop.
few of them then. Okay, good.
Exactly. And they'll do everything to this. And you know what's really sad? You can get narcissists become quite abusive because they can't maintain that facade. So if they can draw you in. And this was what happened. This narcissist that I knew, I was living in a house, I was renting a room inside the house, and they were in a relationship. Actually, a relationship with somebody I knew very well, right? And 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 privately, they will in private they will let all their horridness and nastiness and resentments and all this stuff come out. They'll be really horrible in private, but in public they'll be all sweet and nice, right? Now they weren't physically abusive, but verbally and psychologically and emotionally, absolutely terrible, right? So we have to understand this also with narcissists. That's why I call them BMNs,
Hmm.
bullshit manipulator narcissists, because really their bullshit isn't just to themselves, right? And internally, you might get that, but mostly it's that manipulation.
Yeah.
Everything they do is a manipulation. Everything
Um,
they do is a manipulation. And of course, this ugliness in private comes because, well, the person starts to realize it's all bullshit. And then it all breaks down. So now they have to resort to those ugly, emotional pressure, arguments, nastiness, horridness, insults, etc., as a way to assert control and dominance, right? As this is also for the narcissist, this hierarchy, right, where you are in the pecking order. This absolutely consumes their psychology. They've always got to be at the top, even if it's via bullshit, doesn't matter. And even, of course, it's only internally in their minds they are just the best. Now, if you really start to say, yeah, but you aren't actually queen of the world. You aren't actually king of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would be, except if it wasn't for that. And they always got all these excuses, right? Right. Well, I got unlucky in this or whatever, or this was stolen from me. There's always some reason or fault that's not their own as to why they aren't, super successful and top of the world. Right? It's just incredible, the bullshit. Now, in the book, the first major chapter is quite a long introduction, but and I think it's like chapter 3, but it's the first chapter that really comes to a specific point of understanding that is crucial for
Okay.
understanding vehemence, and that is preposterousness.
Preposterousness. Ooh,
Yes.
another one. Tell me, what is that?
Yeah, right, right. So the preposterous is that which is outside of
Okay.
our usual cognition, our usual thinking, our usual understanding. Preposterous is that which actually happens, but which we um, refuse to acknowledge typically as actually true. No, that can't
Okay.
be. Yeah. Okay. So the bullshit there, the narcissist, and again, like our famous celebrity bullshitters, they will accuse the whole world of doing something which they are doing, right? Or like their opponents. They'll call them lying this or stealing this or cheating this. Why? Because that's what they do. And they
Yeah.
assume because they do it, well, they do it well. Doesn't everybody do it? No, bullshitters.
Right.
No, narcissists.
No,
No,
no.
vehemence. Everybody does not do it. It's
Yeah.
you and a
Yeah.
few others like you. Not everybody. Okay. And the reason they do this because one of their chief rules that they live by. Well, if everybody does it, it must be okay. You
Nope.
remember Lance Armstrong? Remember Lance Armstrong?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I loved Lance Armstrong. I watched all the Tour de France he was in. Right? I mean, he was the man. If you remember when Lance Armstrong was popular, he stood for integrity, he stood for character, he stood for hard work and discipline and perseverance and grit and all this. Turns out it was just a fantastic bullshit there, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever listen to his post exposure interviews?
No. Tell me why.
Oh,
Was a
my.
parent? What was he? The
He would say
deceit would come out. What
the,
would he say?
the justification, right? He said, well, of course I was cheating. Everybody was doing it. How could you not cheat? It was the only way to get ahead. No responsibility for it at all. No acknowledgement
No
that cheating is
accountability. No.
wrong. No accountability. Exactly. Nothing like that.
So is
No,
that a
it's never.
narcissist too then?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. It's never my fault. It's always somebody else's fault. But you see, this is what I'm talking about. It's another example of this preposterousness.
Yeah.
Our brain says ordinary good people, typical, everybody, 99% of the world's people are good people, right? You got to remember
I
percentages, right?
agree. I agree.
Criminals are a tiny, tiny percentage.
Mm-hmm.
Bullshits, and also, unfortunately, they can rise to prominence because they're
Yeah.
so bent. Most good, sensible people say, well, what the heck, to be president or leader or in charge, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility. Who the hell wants to do that?
Yeah.
Not me, thank you very much. And of course, the worst people are attracted to it because they don't care about the work part. They just want the status and the fame and the glory. And that's why we end up with bad leadership for the most part. You do get the occasional really good, honest people. They are there. Don't be mistaken. They're not all that way. But anyway, so we get they have the most drive to get there. And that's like the worst thing. Power attracts the worst, unfortunately. But when you realize that preposterousness is what drives them and really understand this, your brain can say, what I thought is absolutely not possible actually
Mm-hmm.
is. And that, in a nutshell, defines BMNs or supreme narcissists, bullshitters, right? Preposterous.
Bullshitness. Love it.
Preposterous.
Oh my goodness. Wow. All right. Well, we are out of time still. It happens
Yes,
always.
yes,
Been a
yes.
great conversation as always. How can we reach you? Fill us in.
Nobelia.org/connect. And next week we'll have a guest and we'll talk
Yeah.
more about web impeccability and learning what actually it means to change, to
So
really,
looking
really
forward to
change.
that. Sil, thank you again for being here and we'll chat next week. Enjoy the rest of your week. Okay.
You too. Bye bye.
Thank you
Bye
so
bye.
much, darling. Bye bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.